Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
And happy Monday to you all. It is May 22, 2023. And another beautiful day, shaping up to be a beautiful week. I'll tell you, one of the indicators that essentially the summer's here is that the news seems to be drying up a little bit. And it does in the summers. I have noted this because it's been my job for 40 plus years to pay attention to news and to be able to talk about it. And summers tend to be a dry period. What do you know? I mean, I'm sure, am I the only one who's noticed that it has been, I think, a week since there was a mass shooting in the United States? Now, I'm willing to be corrected because I understand the definition of mass shooting is, 3 or more people killed? And the odds are that has happened. But what I'm saying is there's been no mass shooting that gets the attention of Americans. Maybe locally here and there have been some shootings. But man, pretty astonishing since we seem to be doing one a day there for a while. So I, for one, have noticed the absence of mass shootings, which in and of itself is news. You know, I'm thinking to myself, shut up. Every time I point out something, like the Pirates are winning, they go into like a 12-game skid. Or the dog hasn't pooped under the piano in 2 months. He poops under the piano the next day. There hasn't been a mass shooting. It really, God help me if there's a mass shooting today. Jeez. It's like that a lot of our older relatives, people who grew up with superstitions, often, I don't know what you do. You throw salt over your shoulder. I don't know. I don't know what you do, but I'm sorry I even mentioned it. Shootings. Jeez. Hey, I came upon a quote from the late, great Stephen Hawking, and it dovetails nicely with my sense of where we're heading in terms of so-called artificial intelligence. And Stephen Hawking said, among many things, we only have to look at ourselves to see how intelligent life might develop into something we wouldn't want to meet. Yeah, we only have to look at the creators of the intelligence to see what can become of it, to watch its evolution. Just saying. So, I came upon also something interesting, which actually blew me away, and I'm still confused about it. This was in something that Ryan Dito, who now works for the Tribune Review and used to work for City Paper and was often a guest on this program. Ryan Dito noted this, and it's sort of shocking. that for 3 elections in a row, 3 federal elections in a row. So those would be the national elections. Those would be every 4 years. But it turns out that Philadelphia's, that's the biggie in this state. Philadelphia's share of the vote has fallen. And I don't know what that means. And astonishingly, Allegheny County, which has, give or take, about 133,000 fewer registered voters than Philly, has outvoted Philly. We have had a larger impact on state voting totals than Philly. And I wish I could see more about this. I'm stunned, actually, by it, because there's quite a sizable difference. So Philadelphia was outvoted this year. This is the election, the primary, actually, I think we just had. This year, the city was outvoted, Philly was outvoted by Allegheny County. Which again, Allegheny County has 133,000 fewer voters, and yet contributed to the totals of the statewide races tens of thousands more votes than Philly. So I'm just saying, that's interesting, and I would definitely like to see more explication. What's the difference between explication and explanation? Because I was going to say explanation, and then that came calling. Explication. I don't know. Okay, so there's that. Oh, God. Another bizarre thing that I saw today while rooting around for things to share with you, I saw a story. I think this is in the Washington Post, and I didn't make an effort to save it, but it's about, it's written by a guy who had a neighbor who he found so astonishing person by virtue of his longevity that he ended up, I guess, writing a book about him. His neighbor, I guess, is now dead, but he lived to be 109. He was a doctor to somewhere in the Midwest. He was a doctor, and he practiced long. And I mean, so he lived, born really at the beginning of the very beginning of the 20th century, lived into the 21st century. And this guy is talking about the changes that a life of that span, 109, what that man saw. And the trials and the tribulations. And I mean, it's sort of, it's good to know that, no one lives in a particularly quiet time, because we are living in such a seemingly chaotic, terrifying time. But as he looked at this man's span, and he saw a person having to overcome all kinds of, fought in World War II, right? 109. And he has a memory in the book of looking out his window one warm Sunday morning, I think, and seeing the guy shirtless, washing his girlfriend's car and looking really, really good. He was taken by how vigorous the guy looked as he soaked up his girlfriend's car. And then he, after painting this picture, he points out that at the time, his neighbor was 102. God. Anyway, the thing that blew me away of all of it, and again, I'm sure it doesn't mean anything, but it's odd. It's an odd coincidence. The guy was born in, I'm remembering, like 1906 or something. He was born in Galesburg, Illinois. Have you ever been to Galesburg, Illinois? It's a little town. Historically, I think it gets mentioned because it was the setting for the debates between Abraham Lincoln and Stephen Douglas. The Lincoln-Douglas debates prior to the Civil War. I was in Galesburg, Illinois, more than once, because that's where my grandfather lived. And that is where my mother was born, a graduate of Galesburg High. And I thought, how odd. I'm reading the story about this vigorous 109-year-old. And it turns out he's born in the same city that my vigorous 100 and soon to be 1-year-old mother was born. It doesn't mean a damn thing, does it? Unless there's something in the water there in Galesburg. Just saying. But it struck me as an odd coincidence. And the little bit that I read of this story of this man, he shared quite a bit with my mother in terms of attitude. The sort of pick yourself up, get on with it kind of thing. If it's bothering you, let it go, drop it, move on. And then this curiosity about life and this enjoying being alive. And I suppose, yeah, if that's your mindset, it must help you live longer. I don't know. Plenty of people who've loved life haven't been so lucky. So I don't know. Something in the water, maybe in Galesburg, Illinois. I'm just saying and passing it on. Another interesting thing. Well, that's for you to say. It's for me to throw out there. If you're interested, that's good. Obviously, what I traffic in here are things of some interest to me. Notice, by the way, I haven't said anything about the debt stealing thing. Why am I not surprised? The clock keeps ticking and nothing is reconciled. Hey, what do we got now? Somewhere I saw 10 days. Somewhere I saw can't pay our bills in 2 weeks. And all of it unnecessary. All of it simply a bunch of performative crapola Republican politics. Incredible. What is with voters that they keep putting people in positions to behave badly? Why would you want people, why would you send them to Washington, D.C. to stymie things, to screw things up, to engage in elbowing each other out of the way for more screen time? What is wrong with the voters? I'm sick and tired of squawking about the people that are elected to these positions. Who the hell are the people electing them? What the hell is wrong with them? Well, here, meanwhile, I do this all the time, don't I? I derailed myself. I was not going to talk about that. I was talking to you about something I found interesting. And it has to do with those G7 guys over there in Japan. I paid next to no attention to any of it. I did get an email from Kurt complaining that pictures of the G7 leaders didn't identify any of them. And he's looking at the picture and saying, who the hell are those people? You know, just when you thought you knew everybody. Remember, Angela Merkel was always there. Right. I mean, she's gone. And of course, the British PM changed like every 2 seconds recently. So it was easy to lose track of who that person was. So it's, yeah, I can see where you'd look at them and say, who the hell are these people? The only one I recognize is. So I looked at them and I recognized, but had trouble with one of the, I recognized Biden. I recognized the Japanese guy because he was Japanese. I don't know his name. He was the host. I recognize the still handsome Mr. Trudeau to our north. And I figured the blonde babe was the new fascist president of Italy. And I did know the PM. His name is Sunak now. He took over from, remember her, Liz Truss? What did she last? I think 44 days. And that was after what's his name? The guy with the hair, Boris, right? So, okay, so then there was that. And then the person taking over after Angela, I did recognize him. I couldn't remember his name. His name is Scholz, Scholz. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And so, and then Macron. So he he's still there. And I think that's it, isn't it? And then there's more than 7. So you're looking at it and you're thinking, wait a minute, this is G7. How come I'm seeing 9 or something? It's because the head of the EU is also included. And then the head of another European, I forget what, is another woman, is also there, right? So that's who it was, just saying. And now I finally get to the story I thought you might find interesting. It was pointed out that these very powerful people, the heads of state of the UK, France, the United States, Canada, Germany, Italy, Japan. Am I forgetting somebody? I don't think so. are all extremely, supposedly, unpopular in their home countries. So that the reason they're all smiling in the picture is they're not in their home countries, except for the poor Japanese fellow. So, I mean, all of them unpopular in terms of, you know, how do we know that? I mean, we know that because of polls, right? So polling data, the most recent polling data of all of these important folks that met at the G7 showed the most popular one, according to latest polling, was the Italian female fascist. And you would think, I mean, she just got elected, but even she didn't break 50%. So she tops the entire group, G7 group, at having supposedly 49% of Italians having a favorable opinion of her. Her name is Giorgia Meloni. Who do you think's next? I mean, she's number one. So who would be? Guess what? You won't believe who's number two. Coming in second, Joe Biden. Yes, indeedy. After the fascist female, who got 49, Joe Biden comes in with 42% of Americans thinking he's okay. What does that say about the other guys there at the G7? Whew. Justin Trudeau, 39% of Canadians say he's doing okay. 39%. Who knew? Olaf Scholz of Germany, 34%. This makes Biden look like, you know, a guy who's, you know, like the most popular guy in the class. Well, he is the most popular guy. And what do we get? We get Sunak of Britain, 33% approval rating. And Fumio Kishida, that's the Japanese guy, he has a whopping 31%. Over 2/3 of Japanese people say, we don't approve of our president. You wonder how any of these guys are in the positions they're in. I mean, after all, these are all democracies. And I get, maybe it says that in democracies, people are more inclined to complain because they can. I don't know. More sort of petulant and willing to, I have no idea. And by the way, coming in dead last of all those big shots is the littlest one, and that'd be Macron. And we know how unhappy the French are. Did you see the latest thing they're doing? They're banging pots. Yeah. Making a big clamor, loud noises, saying that they can't hear him. If he comes to speak, people start banging on pots. 25% approval rating. So I'm just saying, what the hell? It's no wonder people want to be an autocrat. You know, I'll give you the people with 99% approval ratings. Yeah, you wouldn't want to live there, but yeah. As a matter of fact, there are, of the 22 major nations, who decides what's a major nation? But I'm reading this. 4 out of the 22 major countries, only 4 leaders had approval ratings above 50%. 4 out of 22, I think, democratic nations. And one of them is Modi in India, who's a budding autocrat and a divider. Somebody you got to keep an eye on. And joining him with over 50% approval is the president of Mexico, which surprised me, and the PM of Australia, and who else? Somebody in Switzerland. Who cares? There you go. Joe Biden, ladies and gentlemen. Don't count him out. He bestrides the world stage like a colossus, right behind the little fascist bitch. I'm sorry, that was uncalled for. What was I watching the other night? And the person kept swearing. And it really got on my nerves. And I thought to myself, wait a minute. That sounds like you, babe. If it's getting on your nerves that there's all these, 4-letter words and, words you're not supposed to say around your mother popping in to every sentence. Yeah. And you would think at that moment, I said to myself, how about, trying to get a little control of your tongue? But I don't think that is what I thought. But I was bemused. I think I was bemused by the fact that I was thinking, God Almighty, could you try for a larger vocabulary or something? Oh, I know exactly what it was. I took one of I forget which one of you told me. You said that I should be watching Mrs. Maisel. So I went back to, I guess, the last time I watched it, which is somewhere in season 4, because they keep track for you. And I started watching again. And it's her, Mrs. Maisel's manager, who every other word. And I really thought, all right already. So you're a tough thing. So, shut up. Huh? No. Okay. Oh, by the way, banging on pots, making a clamor. The first time I encountered that as a custom was after I'd moved here. And I had gone through many New Year's Eves in my life. I think it's New Year's Eve, right? Without hearing people banging on pots outside. But that ended after I came here to Pittsburgh. And it wasn't something, for some reason, the neighborhood I'm in now, I hear it. And as somebody who often goes to bed before the clock strikes midnight, because who gives a damn as far as I'm concerned, it's annoying. So where did that come from? I mean, it's a readily available, everybody's got a pot. Although some people, because there's a phrase, doesn't have a pot to piss in. There, see, I mean. But, and I guess that would be a definition of so poor. Because everybody's got a pot. Almost. And, something to bang it with. So the French now are doing that. And I'm thinking, the French, I don't know. Do they ever work? It seems like all they do is strike or bang pots or, generally, I don't quite get it. They get 20 times more vacation already than any of us do. They get more days off. They get better pay. They got all kinds of safety net protections, and they're pissed off. So now they're banging pots. And I learned this today from reading an article on the pot banging. It says here, banging on pots dates back to the Middle Ages. Well, I don't know. My guess is way before the Middle Ages, some people banged on pots. That's it. Little kids bang on pots. But I guess as a custom, as a tradition, at least some historian insists. And it was intended, this is the most odd thing, and then it doesn't go into any further exploitation. It says here that in the Middle Ages, they banged on pots to shame ill-matched couples. What? I mean, I don't even know where to go with that. And if ever anything was stuck into an article that begs for clarification, give me more. What do you mean ill-matched couples? And what? Where a guy maybe marries somebody beneath his station, or I don't know. And then what? The people of the town would go out and bang pots at him? Anyway, that's what it says. There was even a word for it. It was called charivari, charivari, charivari. Doesn't even look like I don't know. Anyway, this is all some French historian telling us this. And then in the 1830s, it got more political because they started banging pots to complain about King Louis Philippe the First. Although I suppose he was just King Louis Philippe, right? There's, if you're the first of a name, do you get the one after your name, the Roman numeral, only after some other person takes the same name? Like with the popes. Or with, whatever, I don't know. If you're the first one, like if there was a pope and he picked the name Jack, Pope Jack, everybody knows there was never a Pope Jack, so he doesn't have to say Pope Jack the First. It's just Pope Jack. And then if somebody else decides to take Jack, then he's Pope Jack the Second, and then you have to make a distinction if you're talking about the popes and Jack comes up. There's a 1 and there's a 2. I don't know. I'm just saying, is it 1 before? Nobody cares. This is the kind of crap that infests my head. And I never get answers. I throw this stuff out here. You guys, don't help. I don't know. Okay, so the French are banging pots. I wanted to share that with you. Oh, God. There was a great little piece in a great publication called Pittsburgh City Paper. Mm-hmm. You might have heard of it. And I saw it today. And it's about 10 things, promises, or whatever, ideas that never got beyond ideas in Pittsburgh, where we were told, hey, we're going to build this. And there were all these articles written and people got so excited, and then And some of them are, I don't know. Some of them I don't even remember. But there is this one. Do you remember? We're in the Strip District now, okay? There was that building in the Strip District right near the Heinz History Center. And man, it had that big fish on it because it was Woolies, however you pronounce it. It's where they stored fish. It was a big building. It isn't there anymore. They tore the fish building down. Why did they do that? Well, they did it because somebody was going to build a skyscraper. Remember that term? The story doesn't tell me who the developer was, but they tore it down because they were going to build a big, huge skyscraper right there at 1520 Smallman Street in the Strip. They had second thoughts. Probably pandemic. There's empty skyscrapers all over the downtown. What idiot would build another one? But they already took the fish down. And it wasn't easy because that building they took down had 3-foot concrete walls. 3-foot wide concrete walls. Because it was built as a huge freezer. So it couldn't have been easy to knock that thing down. It's down, and what's there? Nothing! And they mentioned the Garden Theater. What's with that? Used to be a porn theater. And then, man, they cleaned it up. If you've been by there, North Side, it looks beautiful now. They have a whole new, they still have the Garden Theater sign, only it's been upgraded. It's beautiful. It's been totally rebuilt. And it's empty. So it's been sitting there now, all gussied up with no place to go for the longest time. I'm just asking. Or city papers just asking. And then they go into other things like the, that so-called bus rapid transit project connecting downtown with Oakland. I swear they've been talking about that since I moved here 40 plus years ago. What could be so hard? And City Paper says, apparently now construction could begin as early as this fall. But then City Paper snidely says, but by the time it's finished, the rest of the world will have probably moved on to aerial gondolas or dozens of tiny drones that whisk you away to anywhere you might want to go. That will be a day late, $1 short, and there's other things too. And then there was this one, which I had always thought sounded so amazing. Remember hearing about some developer wanting to build this huge Ferris wheel. Actually, the inventor of the Ferris wheel, George Ferris, was a Pittsburgher. Yeah. Northsider. So somebody thought, what better place for a Ferris wheel than the North Side? And it was intended to be sort of the anchor of a whole big development called the Esplanade. Esplanade? I don't know. It was supposed to have high-rise housing, hotels, offices, restaurants, a splash park, a pavilion, a marina, all of that. It even included a 2-acre lagoon that would be turned into an ice rink in the winter. But apparently that's been... Well, that one is still on the drawing board. So they're saying that one might still happen. Anyway, just saying, I thought that was interesting. All the things. 10 promising Pittsburgh building projects that never happened. It's a piece in the Post-Gazette for your entertainment and edification. Beth writes, I never heard anyone banging pots at midnight in the Pittsburgh area growing up. So when I go to Scranton for New Year's, you go to Scranton I don't know. I'm not saying Beth, I don't know. You must know someone there. When I would go to Scranton for New Year's, it was a big thing. They bang pots in Scranton. My grandma said it was a way of celebrating after a coal mine strike ended. And then people did it at midnight on New Year's Eve. Could be a total story, but I thought I'd pass it along. Well, thank you. Well, okay, so your grandparents were in Scranton. No, well, I don't know. I'm telling you, I wasn't having auditory hallucinations. I have heard in this neighborhood, I'm in the East End, people banging pots on New Year's Eve. And this ain't Scranton. Speaking of places where, I could, Scranton, that's Joe Biden territory, right? Never been there myself. I could die happy probably without ever having been there. You know where else I've never been? Las Vegas. And now it's a thing with me that I will die without ever stepping foot in Las Vegas. The whole idea of it makes me puke. So why did I say all that? Oh, right. Another place, and I've talked about this before, I will not go. And this has been for some time. It's almost any place south of the Mason-Dixon line. But Florida is the biggie. And I'm still astonished. I was talking to somebody, a neighbor, and she said that they had bought a vacation home in Florida. And I looked at her and I thought, just shut up, Cullen. And I just didn't say anything. But my sense is, why would anyone choose to give the economy of the state run by the vile DeSantis any of their money, their growth, a sense that things are just fine and dandy there? Why, of course I would move to Florida. It's to move to a place is to give it your personal imprimatur. To say, I stand here. I'm throwing in my lot here. I won't even visit the damn place. I don't want to have any of my disposable income going to Florida. And as I said, there's a whole bunch of other states. I just won't go. I know that's nuts. Or not. I really don't think it is. Anyway, I say this because you may have seen this. The NAACP has officially put out a travel advisory. You know, like the State Department does. Oh, I don't know if you want to go there. There's like, and actually other countries are doing for the United States. Other countries' State Departments are flagging the U.S. as a place to be very wary of going, well, because you could end up dead very easily. So the NAACP has, along with other groups, have said, they're not saying you shouldn't go. They're just saying, I just want you to think about it. Because this is a state that, according to the NAACP, is openly hostile toward African Americans. Why? They won't even let their students, their kids, learn about the history of African Americans in that state. So the NAACP is openly hostile to African Americans, not to mention people of color, not to mention LGBTQ plus XYZs. None of it. It urges people to be aware of the state's politics, to put that into the mix of their planning, given that the governor of the state and the state legislature, which is to say the state of Florida, has shown that African Americans are not welcome. And they flat out say this is in direct response to DeSantis's aggressive attempts to erase Black history, to restrict diversity, equity, inclusion in Florida. Well, I'm on board. I'm on board. Let's see what I got here. What else I got here? Yeah. Did you know? I mean, I did know this. Did you know that we have, of course, after Russia invaded Ukraine, we put a lot of sanctions. Sanctions on oligarchs, sanctions on this, blah, blah, blah. If they had money over here, they couldn't get it. If they were not welcome to visit, if we could impound a yacht or two or a private jet, we did, or we tried, or whatever. All that went on, right? The sanctions. What I didn't know is that Russia, in response, did the same to us. It created a list of people who were sanctioned. Americans who were sanctioned by the Russian government. And I guess they just expanded their list. Guess who's on it? Brad Raffensperger. Does that name ring a bell? Yeah, that's the Republican Secretary of State of Georgia. Nice looking guy. He testified at the January 6th committee. He's the one who Trump called, hey, just fire me, I just need a pound of money. Brad Raffensperger is on the Kremlin's list of sanctioned Americans. What do they give a shit about him for? Oh, wait. Look who else is on the list. Letitia James. Now that would be the state attorney general of the great state of New York, who had the gall to bring charges, or is intending to, I hope, against Putin's pal, Donald Trump. Which is also why Lieutenant Michael Byrd, who is the Capitol police officer who shot the pro-Trump rioter, Ashley Babbitt, on January 6th. So these three people, it's like being on Nixon's enemies list. I mean, this is bragging, right? This is making their obits. This is, oh God, I wish I could ever have something this great. It's like being a clue in the New York Times crossword puzzle. It is, I mean, huge. So Raffensperger, Letitia James, and Lieutenant Byrd are now sanctioned by the Russians in retaliation for the sanctions imposed by the United States after Russia invaded Ukraine. What's absurd here, of course, is that Brad Raffensperger doesn't want to go to Russia. As far as I know, Letitia James and Lieutenant Byrd don't want to either. As far as I know, they don't have assets that now they can't get to in Moscow or something. What nonsense! What absurdity! Just saying. Oh. Okay. Here's something else I have. This is Jamel Bowie. Have you ever seen the Norman Rockwell? It's a group of 4 paintings called The Four Freedoms. I think it's 4 different paintings. Yeah. I mean, I've been at his museum, so I've seen it. And the 4 freedoms, that is something that Franklin Delano Roosevelt first spoke of in one of his State of the Union addresses. And he was talking about the foundations. What is the foundation of our democracy? And he said, it is founded on 4 essential human freedoms. The freedom of speech and expression. The freedom of every person to worship God in his own way. The freedom from want and the freedom from fear. Now, these were, the sort of guiding principles of Roosevelt's New Deal. Bowie says that Republicans now have redefined clearly by their actions the 4 freedoms. And man, he's got it right on point. He says, here are the 4 freedoms we can glean from the Republicans and what they've been doing in state legislatures, especially. They believe in the freedom to control, to restrict the bodily autonomy of women and repress the existence of anyone who does not conform to traditional gender roles. The freedom to control. There is, for the Republicans, the freedom to exploit, to allow the owners of business to weaken labor and take advantage of workers as they see fit. And if you think that's not what Republicans have in mind, I give you Arkansas, Iowa, Mississippi, Ohio. Those are just the four most recent that have advanced legislation to allow children as young as 14 to work more hours, to work without a permit, to be subjected to dangerous workplace conditions. I remember when I first saw this, it was Sarah Huckabee. I was at Arkansas, right? And she was bragging about passing this bill to allow children to work. They're supposed to be in school. There was a reason that those labor laws exist. Children were exploited. They're cheap labor. And what do Republicans really like? Cheap labor. That's right. Maybe that's why they want all these so-called, they want babies born. It's cheap labor. So there's the freedom to control, the freedom to exploit, the freedom to censor. That's the third one. To suppress ideas that challenge and threaten the ideologies of the Republicans. Like teaching about systemic racism. And number 4 is the freedom to menace. To carry weapons anywhere you want to brandish them in public, to turn the right of self-defense into a right to threaten and, in fact, kill innocent people. If you want to know what the Republicans are about, look at what they champion. Look at what they do with their power. Republicans in at least 18 states have passed laws, imposed bans, designed to keep discussion of racial discrimination out of classrooms. They are banning books left, right, and center. In half of the states, they have introduced and passed constitutional carry laws, concealed weapons in public without a permit, unconcealed weapons without a permit. Who cares? Everybody should be able to, right, menace. So, you know, I've often said Republicans don't have any policies. I mean, what are they for? All they do is this performative bull. But look to the state legislatures, and you do see what they're for. And they are enacting what they are for. Controlling women, exploiting children, making us dumber, and making us live in a state of fear and menace. The 4 freedoms. My, how they've changed. Well, that's it, guys. I'm done. You have a nice day. Man, I hope you can get outside. It's a beaut. Okay? Talk at you tomorrow.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.